as always, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Right here in Perth, Western Australia, which is where I am, it's currently almost 2:30 p.m. It's been a very hot day because we're in the middle of a heat wave. Such is life. It's not the hottest day we've had this week. The other day it was actually 43 degrees and today it's 38, but it's really overcast because we've actually got a cyclone brewing in the northwest of the state. And although that is quite some miles away, over 1,000 miles, we're still experiencing the influences of the weather patterns. But anyway, enough of that waffling. Before I get into the video today and the content, which of course we're talking about rhodonite, which is actually a very pretty crystal. It's one that I actually really do like, but it's not one that I personally have worked with. So I'll kind of do that disclaimer up front. A lot of the information that I have about it is through interacting with other people that have used it and the feedback that they've got from me. And because I used to retail crystals, I know that rhodonite was up there as one of the most popular. And so when I used to sell crystals, I would actually make sure that I had rhodonite as one of the crystals in my stock items because it was so popular. That and rhodochrosite, at least in the tumbled forms, if nothing else. But anyway, before I go any further, I have to say, look, thank you for joining me today. As always, welcome to the channel, whether you're new or returning. I do request at this point in time that if you see anything about the channel that you actually like, can you please leave a comment or at least like the video just to help me out a bit with the algorithms, because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to motivate myself, but I push on through and I hope that people are going to receive benefit from what I put up. The other thing I wanted to say, obviously, is if you're familiar with me and the channel, you know I go off on a tangent. Okay, that is right up there, right at the very get-go, letting you know I do go down a waffle and sometimes I will start storytelling. So bearing that in mind, if time is of an essence for you and you've got limitations, I put timestamps in the description so you can jump to the areas of interest for you, because let's be real, you might not be interested in my waffle, and I'm not going to be offended if you aren't, because it's different strokes for different folks. But anyway, let's just jump straight in now and get into it because I've already waffled. Do leave a comment. Let me know, though, where you live in the world and what your weather's like, because I know it's pretty diverse across the globe. Now, as always, because I'm Australian, and when I put together these videos, I always knew, I've grown up here, that Australia was very mineral rich and we had a lot of different crystals and these kind of things. But I was not aware just how much we've got, shall we say, and some of the variations. So this particular image that we're looking at here is actually rhodonite crystals on galena. Okay, I've not long done rhodochrosite, so I'm going to be getting my tongue twisted, no doubt. Anyway, if we talk about rhodonite across history and the culture, that's actually interesting in itself. But actually, before I do that, I want to make the point, because I just went down a tangent, that the rhodonite that I'm used to looking at before I was putting together this video is those images that I've got on the thumbnail. And I think most people, if they're going to buy rhodonite, that is what they're looking for. But something like this image here would probably be a specimen that collectors of minerals, whether they're geologists or whatever, would be really interested in. Anyway, rhodonite has been used in various civilizations, including the ancient Greeks and Romans, and often it was used as a decorative stone or for ornamental purposes. In ancient Egypt, it was associated with the goddess Isis. So if you're into anything Isis, which I quite am actually, I love the history of Isis if you look into her qualities and that kind of thing. So anyway, it's believed to have protective and healing properties with the Egyptians. As far as the Russians go, it was called the eagle stone, and it was considered to be sacred, which is also associated with the Russian eagle symbol. And apparently, because they believed it was sacred, they actually used it in the construction of St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg. Anyway, just a little bit of trivia there for you. Oh, actually, before I carry on, yes, it was popular with the Chinese as well. And from their cultural perspective, it was believed to bring calm and harmony and balance into relationships. So obviously, even to this day, the Chinese will often include rhodonite in their feng shui practices, placing it perhaps in the bedroom and that kind of thing. Native Americans also have a value, shall we say, of rhodonite and its healing properties, because they believe it strengthens the body and spirit and enhances intuitive abilities. So my source says, look, if you know different about any of the content that I'm putting up, please leave a comment and just say, look, if you know that to be accurate or not, tell us. If you think there's something that needs to be expanded on, leave that comment, let us know. So to keep it all brief, to try and shorten some of my waffle, when it comes to the zodiac, it's actually recommended for the star signs Leo, Aries, and Virgo. Now, of course, as usual, just because it's recommended for them doesn't mean that other people can't wear it. And in fact, I would encourage most people, and I intend to actually get myself a nice piece of rhodonite in the very near future and start meditating with it. It's a very positive crystal. It's got so many positive attributes that, yes, it can benefit all of us. So when we talk about its attributes and how it can benefit us, obviously, if you know how I work, I've got some videos where I go into it in more detail. But from a metaphysical overview, rhodonite is actually referred to as a stone of affection and unconditional love. It's believed to promote spiritual growth and development, heighten awareness, to open and activate the heart chakra, to be able to access the feelings of divine love, to know that you are loved and a valued spirit, soul, human being on a journey through life by the Creator. So when we talk about love as well, we're talking about it's believed to enhance the quality of our partnerships and our relationships by bringing more love into them. I'm going to talk about the rescue remedy stuff in a little while because that's actually quite fascinating. It's supposed to support life purpose and direction, as in reveal it to you. If you've got any past life issues, as in unfathomable phobias, shall we say, and you don't know where they come from, you've got no reason perhaps to be scared of heights. That's one example of it that somebody told me years ago when doing a past life memory recall. They actually saw the causal reason for their fear of heights, and therefore they were able to heal it, to send healing energy towards it, because it had no relevance to this current lifetime. So these are the attributes. It can also enhance your psychic gifts and your capacity to tap into your intuitive aspect of self and that claircognizance. If you don't know what claircognizance means, that's that inner knowing. You just know. And it doesn't have visions, it doesn't have bells and chimes going off when you get that knowing. And an example that I can give you of that is actually I'll draw on a family situation. My sister many years ago was dating a guy and she really loved his father. It was a long-term relationship. And anyway, she came to me and she said that the old man had been diagnosed with cancer. And although I'd never met him, I just automatically knew. I just thought, this is not going to end well. I feel this is terminal for him. Although, of course, when she was telling me, oh, yeah, no, they're very positive about the future and all the rest of it, was just, okay. Of course, when you get that firm knowing that it's going to have a bad ending, you don't tell people that, because it's so important for people that do have a diagnosis that they maintain that hope, for the future, and they just deal with it one stage at a time. Because actually, to be honest, when it comes to those kind of predictions, the reality is energy can change. There might be a new treatment or something like that actually enhances and leads to a more positive outcome for the person. But anyway, going back to it, claircognizance is that inner knowing where you just know inexplicably, you know what's going to happen and you can't explain why. It's just there. Now, at this point in time, this is where I invite the geologists to jump in, or the gemologists, and give us some extra information, because my brain is not equipped to process all of this scientific information. But basically, what I understand is that rhodonite is a manganese silicate. It's got a hardness of 5.5 to 6.5. Now, if you don't know what that means, it means that it's not super soft, but it's not really hard, and you would need to be careful with it because it can break and shatter. And I mean, that makes sense when you think about the way it's actually formed, and we'll be looking at how it's formed. Okay, so anyway, they're usually found growing in calcite and not generally as freestanding crystals. This is the information that I managed to pull together. But the other information that I got was that the best freestanding crystals are probably from Australia, Brazil, or Peru. Now, you can see here, I've written the names of a number of countries where it's actually sourced, where they have mines and where it can be obtained. But the reality is, this is not an extensive list. You can get it from other places as well. And yeah, we'll talk about that later on when we talk about buying and how this information becomes relevant when you're actually buying crystals. Anyway, when it comes to the colouring of the rhodonite, it's a kind of a rosy pink colour. That's where the name came from. Rhodonite, I believe, is a breakdown of Greek words because it's been around for a long time. But anyway, they refer to it as rosy pink, but it can actually be a very pale pink through to the more intense, vibrant pinks and reddish type colours. And the one that's called red is called red because it's actually almost crimson. It's such a brilliant colour. Now, just to be clear, these really bright coloured ones, they're the ones that are very highly sought after, and they're going to have a price tag to match, because they are basically highly sought after, generally by collectors of specimens, I would imagine. I'm not sure. I don't think you can turn that into jewellery, but realistically, because it's so rare and precious, you really wouldn't want to damage it in its natural state anyway, I wouldn't think. Anyway, the image that we've got in this photo here would be one that we call the black-veined rhodonite, and you can see, I think it's fairly obvious why they would call it black-veined. There is a distinct black pattern here. And look, I've got to admit, I'm a little bit confused because they refer to manganese at different times as being black in colour, but also apparently rhodonite contains a bit of iron in it as well. The iron can give it the black colour too, I would imagine. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about the brown and red ones because getting into the mineral content and information actually takes me, as I said, well outside my comfort zone. I just want to know what it looks like and what it feels like in my hand and what I can expect from it. Putting it into perspective, the pink and the black veins rhodonite is considered to be uncommon but not rare. Well, I didn't know that because to me I thought it was fairly common because I've seen it everywhere basically, and as I said before, it's a stock standard item that I would have in a retail store, and most of the stores that I go to do have rhodonite with it. But the other thing that I found was that sometimes it's referred to, the pink of the rhodonite is referred to as being a raspberry pink. So that should give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to be looking at next. So the way I work, and you're probably the same, is when I'm informing myself about a crystal for the purposes of potentially buying it or potentially, historically retailing it that other people might be interested in, then I want to actually know what the crystal looks like. I want to be able to identify when somebody's trying to flog something on me that is not the real McCoy. Just because, so let's say if I was looking perhaps at the Peruvian and I didn't know that was rhodonite, I might still buy that anyway, not knowing what it actually is scientifically, because it's actually beautiful and because it's got a very interesting structure to it. But knowing whether it's rhodonite or not is going to help me make a decision about whether or not I'm paying too much for a crystal, or if I'm not paying enough, or if I've got a good deal or whatever. So these photos here, that's the point of me putting these in. You can see here we've got one from New South Wales in Australia where the pink, as far as I'm concerned, looks like a raw steak or a piece of corned beef. And that might actually be more about the photo or the photographer and the light that the image was taken in, because you see it resting against the black. But what I like about that particular photo is that they've used a pen to show just how big that slab is, and that is a slab of rhodonite. And as far as I know, that's a pretty big slab, okay? Now, when it comes to the Madagascar one, I think that's interesting to look at, because some of us might walk past that and not even realise that you're looking at rhodonite if you are not fully informed on it. The Russian one, of course, meets all of everybody, I would imagine, certainly my expectations of what the normal, the genuine article looks like. Now, in regard to the Peruvian image here, I actually found this online, where there was actually a whole conversation going on about it. And apparently when this Peruvian sample was first brought from Lima, it came out apparently in the 1990s, and the people that bought them at the time thought it was low grade, and so they bought it very cheaply. They actually bought about 100 specimens for about $500. So if you think about that, that's about $5 per crystal that they paid for it way back then. But anyway, what happened was the buyer later found out that, of course, this is extremely high grade rhodonite, and of course he was able to sell that on for more than tenfold what he paid for it. He made a huge profit from it. And just bear in mind that if he's the first buyer and then he sold that on for 10 times the price, by the time the next seller gets it and sells it on, because you've got wholesalers and retailers and all the rest of it, everybody has to make a profit along the way. But either way, getting back to what it looks like, yes, the Peruvian is extremely high grade rhodonite. Now, in this one, we're looking again at different types of rhodonite, because obviously you've got it in the rough and you've got it polished. And you can see here with the images on the left, they've got more pink than black to them. When I look at them, I've got to say that I have a crystal, a polished lepidolite, and I think it would be very easy to mistake that square uncut, it is cut, the image in the middle on the left hand side, which is a square shape. When I look at that texture, that reminds me of my tumbled stone, and the colour is not that different. So when we're talking about buying items, it's very easy to get confused with what it is. And not only that, because, as I said before with that photograph of the New South Wales, big slab, when we look at these photos, light plays a part in it. And so we don't get a clear idea of the image a lot of the time. This is why a lot of the people that are retailing take photographs outside, or they have the crystals and whatever carvings they've got in a light box, so that they can try and capture not only the colour and the hue, but also so that they can highlight any of the potential flaws that are in the crystal. And what is the other reason that they do it? I've forgotten it right now, but it's so important that they do that. If you look at the large image that I've got in the centre, you will see that whoever has been selling this one, or who was taking the photograph, has actually zoomed right in so that you can see these little crusty bits. I call them crusty. That's obviously not the correct name. Perhaps inclusions might be the right name. Let me know. But the point of that is, because somebody who has got an image in their head of what rhodonite might look like may actually think that rock is broken, or it's not what it should be, or that it's super low grade, when it's probably not. But it's certainly knowing if there's deviations from expectation, shall we say, that's going to help us determine, are we going to buy the product or not? Because it might be overpriced for what we're getting. But anyway, here you can see a couple of different types of, these are all genuine, by the way. So speaking about genuine, yes, rhodonite can be faked, okay? And this is one of the reasons, if you're a very astute buyer and you're looking for high grade and all the rest of it, there is ways to test whether or not it's the genuine article. What my information is, I haven't done this, okay, but this is a recommendation that I saw online, is that because rhodonite contains iron and manganese in it, it's actually magnetic. And so they say that if you were to use a magnet, it should be able to, oh gosh, what's the word? I can't think about it. Obviously be magnetically attracted to your magnet. Now, I put an image up of the magnet that they recommended, because I think that's the best one to describe it. I can't. What is it? A neodymium magnet. That's supposed to be one of the bigger ones, and I think if you've got anything there that's going to give you the best outcome. It's not going to damage your crystal either by using it, and it's not super expensive. They're only about 20 Australian dollars because I did check online. But no, I'm not that invested in it that I would go as far as buying the magnet myself. And then there's another way of testing. Different strokes for different folks. Let me know if you've done any of this and what your thoughts are. Is perform a breath test on it, because apparently if you hold the gemstone near your mouth and you breathe on it and then count how long it takes for the fog or the mist to clear off the crystal, if it takes more than 3 seconds, they say it's likely a fake. Another method is to check the bands on, if you've got this veiny type rhodonite, as I stumble over my words, check those, because real rhodonite has very dark coloured bands. They're uneven, and the fake tend to have, I guess they don't have the same I guess it'd be like looking at a plastic bead, wouldn't it? They just can't make these veins in the same way that nature makes them, okay? What else have we got here? That's about all I can tell you from that, I think, as I check my notes, as I did, because I'm multitasking, not necessarily terribly well. Look, if you've got any information or tips, let us know, please. Once again, leave a comment, okay? So, as always, when I create these slides, I have it bullet pointed so that you can get an idea yourself about what it means. There's so many benefits that would take forever to discuss them. But basically, with rhodonite, it will enhance and offer clarity to your own inner experiences, whether or not this is during your sleep or a meditative state, or even actually in your dreams, because this is part of creating this greater awareness and understanding. What can I say? So we talk about raising awareness, being able to see the big picture, being able to get some direction in our lives, finding our life purpose, then connecting, obviously, with the higher self aspect. That's really important. The dream stuff I'm going to do a little bit of a waffle on, because it talks about dreams, dreaming interpretation and understanding, and also psychic gifts. Now, if you're anything like me, long before I actually stepped into my gifts and recognized and acknowledged them and learned to try and control them, I used to get a lot of messages in my dream state. And I always recall, probably it was about 1990, when you have a vision, it's like, it doesn't matter what happens in your life. You can be 25 years down the track, and those visions you can still see as if it was the day that you had them. So in this particular dream, I just had my first child, and I had some very colourful dreams, shall we say, which I didn't understand at the time, not fully. It was a bit sad for me, I remember, but it was basically a premonition. It was my family and I were going in different paths, and I was stepping into my own independence as a mother and wife. And what I do recall about it, there was some really vivid imagery in it. It was a very symbolic dream, but at the time I didn't have capacity to understand what the meaning of the colours were that I saw, because it was very vivid. And I also didn't understand things like what the water meant. There was bridges there as well. There was all sorts of things. Like, what was the other thing I saw? Yeah, I can't remember. I'm not going to go into it. Actually, it gets a bit too personal. But either way, it's about having these dreams and then being able to understand what they mean. And that's all part of growth and development. So it was much later on down the track when I started, I made the decision that I wanted to consciously develop my gifts and get a heightened understanding of them. And then I started doing things, consciously researching things like symbolism, the things that my guides and angels, if you like, were trying to show me as part of communicating to me. Anyway, so basically the idea is, if you want to be able to access the dream information and to be able to interpret them and understand them, you would pop a piece of rhodonite under your pillow. And the other thing too, because with rhodonite, it's not just about accessing the higher levels and the higher self-connection. It's about grounding and embedding it into our current existence as we walk the life path, because we can all think loving thoughts, but when push comes to shove, we might not have that willpower or whatever to do it, or we might decide that it's too hard, or we can always show that person love tomorrow or whatever. But when we talk about Rhodonite, we're talking about actively walking the talk, I guess, actually doing and following our spiritual guidance. So it does inspire, it does motivate. And that's where that grounding and centering comes in, that embedding it into the current existence. Oh, I forgot to mention past life recall and healing. Yes, I think I mentioned that on the other one, so I'm not going to go into it. But yes, absolutely. It does, I believe, help a person to access past life memories and heal any past life issues from them. So you can see here on this slide, it's got multiple and diverse physical healing attributes, which covers a lot of ground, a lot of areas. So I would recommend that you actually just read this. And if you suffer from any of these conditions, consider getting a piece of the black and pink rhodonite, which is actually the cheaper one. A tumble stone of it would be enough to actually just wear on your person. If you're a bloke, wear it in your pocket. If you're a lady, put it in your bra. Or put it under your pillow or whatever. If you've got things like scar tissue and wounds, you could actually rub the wound gently, run it across the injury or your scar marks or your birthmarks or whatever. And if you do decide to try this out, let us know how successful it was for you, if you observed any changes. And the changes, I might add, might not be about a physical change. This is where I'm interested as well. It might actually be that suddenly you become comfortable with that scar or that birthmark. That might be the change that happens, and these are the things I'm interested in as well. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about rhodonite being the emotional rescue remedy. And this is because it's recommended for anybody who's got some really deep-seated emotional pain and wounds. And, that can be the mental health issues, if you like, of trauma, PTSD, CPTSD, things like that, the anxiety and depression disorders, the really chronic conditions alleged to benefit from wearing or working with rhodonite. But we don't have to have these really big conditions to be able to benefit from it, because most of us throughout the course of our life, we're going to experience some suffering and pain, shall we say. So we could use it intermittently when we're addressing some really big issues, some big challenges, and that can be things such as grief and loss and sorrow. It's basically credited for dispelling emotional pain and to clear away the wounds and scars of the past. If you're a survivor of an abusive situation, if you've translated that into self-destructive behaviours and feelings of self-hatred or hatred to others, a lot of anger and resentment that's really deep, it helps to heal in many ways, because it allows a person to see both sides of a situation. Now, generally speaking, as much as that sounds hard, even if you were in an abusive situation, yes, okay, sometimes there are people that are malicious and go out of their way to hurt people. But the reality is, when they are hurting you and lashing out at you, this is never about you deserving to be treated that way. This is about them and their stuff. So this is where that being able to see the big picture comes in. I could go into that into more detail. Say children of a narcissistic parent and all the rest of it, they are wounded, injured to start with. Okay, so whatever they're doing to you is never about you. It's about them. It's about what's happened to them, what they're going through. That doesn't mean that we excuse. Okay, when we talk about forgiveness, we're not saying it's okay that you hurt me and please hurt me again. We're saying, okay, I understand. Right? This is not about me. This is what you have done to me. But at the end of the day, I forgive you. I'm not going to allow this to poison the rest of my life or to taint my capacity to believe in people and to recognize the beautiful people that we see along the way. Okay, this is just examples of it. Then, of course, there is the way that people respond to trauma or the pain of life. Sometimes they can convert that into some really embedded self-loathing and self-destructive behaviours. And this is down to a lack of self-respect a lot of the time, and a failure to be able to put a value on themselves. So what we have with Rhodonite is an opportunity to forgive ourselves, to regain our self-respect and our value, to put in place healthy boundaries where we can protect ourselves while at the same time retaining kindness and our authenticity, I guess. But coming back to it, if you're going through a lot of pain and suffering, a lot of emotional pain, or you're struggling to recover from emotional pain of the past, or you're struggling to leave abusive relationships right now, you might actually benefit from using Rhodonite. So let me know. Please do let me know if you did use it and how that translated. And if your name is de-identified in the comments, nobody's going to know who you are, okay? So you can safely reveal a little bit. Don't reveal too much though, okay? Just try and keep it, I guess, a little bit summarized. Says me who goes down the rabbit warren quite often. So, of course, when we're talking about the chakras and Rhodonite, we're talking about working with the heart chakra. Now, yes, I can understand people who are not aware of chakras, or who have limited understanding of them. Most of the time, the heart chakra is portrayed as being this emerald green, which I've done here. But this is mainly because actually I can't make it pink and green. I don't have that technological know-how. But the heart chakra is actually green and pink, and the pink is very self-focused. It is that self-love, self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, for not meeting your own expectations, things like that. And so this is why Rhodonite is associated with the heart, I believe. When we talk about the black of Rhodonite, this is probably the explanation for the base chakra, because the base chakra or the root chakra is not always portrayed as red. Sometimes it is portrayed as black, but at the end of the day, it would be the earth grounding, what they call the earth star chakra as well, which is about a foot beneath the feet, and that's that grounding capacity. Now, there was something else I was going to say about colors, actually, not so much chakras. Black is a color associated with freedom and liberation. A lot of people, and I think this is social conditioning, see black as being a color that's ominous and something to be feared. Well, from the color symbolism perspective, it's not about fear, okay? It is about freedom and liberty. So quite often, if you see these people that wear black all the time, whoever they are, just try and get an insight into their psyche as to what it might be about them that they wear black. Now, at different times, for example, for myself, I have been, my wardrobe has largely been black. Black is not my favorite color. I actually love color. I love all the colors of the rainbow. But for me, being an overweight woman, that old, what do they call it, old chestnut of women look better if they're overweight wearing black because black's very slimming. So I had a primarily black wardrobe at one point in time. So that idea of freedom and liberty actually translates to that as well, is the desire to be free of that weight, or free of the emotional burden of being overweight, that being uncomfortable with who and what I am. So for different people, it means different things. It's just something worth mentioning here. So, of course, when it comes to the uses for rhodonite, there's multiple ways of using them. A lot of it is largely dependent on the type of rhodonite it is and the quality of it, because obviously if you get those really expensive specimens, I don't think very often that they would be made into jewellery, but perhaps sometimes they are. But ones like what we've got here, the black veined one, they certainly are fine for being turned into pendants, earrings, necklaces, that kind of thing. You can even, if you've got the carvings, you can use them as ornaments. Depending on how big it is, you might use it as bookends or vases or bowls or whatever. Definitely you can use it for holding, whether it's a tumbled stone or, while you're meditating, or one of the larger carvings, or what are they called? I don't know if they do towers. I think they do towers with rhodonite. But either way, yes, you can use it that way. You can meditate with palm stones. You can, as I mentioned in one of the slides, you can actually put it under your pillow as part of the healing. I like putting tumbled stones into those rope settings. I can't remember what they're called now, kind of macrame looking. And then you can alternate your tumbles. You know what I mean? Wear each one or a different one each day if you so desire. So just a couple of affirmations I've put together here. Some of them are generic. I've put them on different slides as well. But I highlighted the one at the bottom because I think this one actually resonates more with rhodonite specifically. Now, of course, when it comes to doing affirmations, remember, keep them brief. The suggestions I make are to give you an idea for creating your own. Keep them brief. Start with I am, finish with I am, and keep it focused on the positive. Those are the tips for making a good affirmation, and then repeat them as often as you need throughout the day. And if you pick one, you could perhaps do it in blocks of, say, 10 times, a couple of times a day as you go through the change, or as you attempt to manifest what it is that you're trying to do, or what it is that you're trying to create with new behavior and thought patterns. So the general idea of a message with rhodonite is basically affirming to you that you are on the right path, and to trust the process and to remain open to receiving spirit, the love of spirit. Just life is full of opportunities. Sometimes it appears, but it's quite superficial. Sometimes these challenges that we see, we can actually get through them by changing the way we think about what we are going through. Is it a problem or is it a growth opportunity? What are we learning from that experience? And if we are repeating mistakes or historically have repeated mistakes, basically just keep striving, keeping on, and have patience. We're all on a journey, and in fact, actually, I'll go off on a rabbit warren here. Yes, we are all on a journey, and our journeys are individual. Yes, we're all going to the same destination at some point in time. We're all going to get there when we will have achieved the goals that we set for ourselves for this life path. The nature of our life path, though, we're going to get more understanding of it if we actually understand numerology. I have found that to be quite revealing, which is one of the reasons why I've done the playlist on numerology. So do feel free to check that out, because you're going to get a lot of insight into why things have happened the way they are for you. You'll be able to see, once you understand your numerology, you will be able to see what challenges you will have agreed to before you were born, because it's all going to tie together with your star sign, your life path, what's been happening to you, some of the challenges you've faced, and that can include family situations as well, and your astrology. It all comes together. So, yeah, for me, rhodonite would be saying just trust the process. You're on track. Don't give up on yourself. Hang in there and work on your emotional balance. So I'm going to differentiate here when we're talking about crystal care, that you've got cleaning, which is basically the cleaning, getting rid of the dirt that it might gather throughout the course of the day or the week or whatever. And then there's cleansing, which is more energetic, okay? But what we need to remember is that when it comes to rhodonite, it's not hard, but it's not super fragile. Of course, that depends on the type of rhodonite, because as we've seen, you've got some that are some really beautiful crystals that are quite transparent. Those ones I don't think would be very hard, as in they could be very easily damaged, and they would likely be specimens. So you would want to put them probably in a cabinet so that they don't get dust on them, because getting rid of the dust might be a bit problematic depending on the host rock. Because what I mean by that is, if it's growing on another rock, that rock might start to dissolve when it's exposed to water. So that's going to influence how you actually clean your crystal. And whoever you buy it from, you might want to ask the questions: what is the rock that it's growing on? Is that water soluble? What's the story with that? So that's for the minerals. And you would likely either keep them in a specimen box or put them away in a display cabinet so that they don't get dust on them. But most of us will probably be buying things like beaded bracelets or pendants that are set perhaps in a silver setting, or even a beaded necklace, or a tumbled stone, things like that. Now, if it's in a silver setting, they're generally more difficult to clean. I don't recommend using those special cleansers. I can't remember what they're called. Sounds a bit technological or whatever. I don't recommend those. For me, I think it's probably better for the crystal in itself to actually wash it in its setting in a very mild soapy solution, tepid water, if there's a lot of grime on it, because, you know, obviously if we're wearing silver, silver does go black, it starts to tarnish, and even your gold, if you've got gold, that can pick up on the perspiration, it gets a bit icky. So you've got to wash the settings. Now, in these instances, you can just pop it in that mug of tepid soapy water, a very mild, gentle detergent. If you need to, you might want to use a soft toothbrush on that setting to get rid of the icky. And then once you've done that, then give it a bit of a rinse and dry it off with a soft cloth. That would be perfectly fine. With your tumbles, of course, you can just really rinse them underwater if you're just getting rid of a bit of dirt or whatever, and dry them off, of course. You wouldn't need to be soaking them in water. I think those cleaners that I'm talking about is some kind of hydro bath. But anyway, moving on. Once you've got it clean, if it needs to be energetically cleansed or recharged because you've been working with it, as always, I recommend putting it in a selenite plate or a dish or on a selenite log if you've got that. Selenite is my go-to, it's my baseline. Now, for other people, you might want to do incense and sage, if that's what you're into. You might also want to put it out on a full moon under the moonlight. I think that would be safe even here in Australia. In Australia, I'm not sure that I would be putting it out in the sun, even with the sunrise, because the more a coloured crystal is exposed to the daylight here in Australia, the more it tends to fade. Earthing is always a good option, as is, I don't do it. I don't do the salt, but some people do. So I'll just say, look, you can put it in a salt bowl if that's your thing, and just rest it on top of the salt. I'm more inclined to do what I call earthing, and it's not something that I do all the time. In fact, actually, I'm going to clarify here. Selenite is my go-to, but I will do different things at different times as I feel drawn to. And that might be once a month or once every couple of months, putting them out under a full moon or something. But back to the earthing. If you're going to do earthing, this is where you put it in sand or soil or whatever. So you can put it in your garden bed. Not necessarily a good idea if you're me, because then you forget where you've actually planted it, you know, trying to grow a rhodonite tree, I suppose. But anyway, yeah, you could do that if you can rely on your memory to know exactly which part of the garden you put it in. Or in another instance, I don't know what I did, but I just about had to tear a plant apart because I had put some crystals in the top of the plant on the soil, or maybe I pushed them in with my finger or something like that to really allow it to be earthed. Anyway, I must have watered it or something like that. So by the time I went to retrieve them, it was a bit of an effort, shall we say. I can't quite remember now. I just remember the nightmare of trying to find my crystals. But anyway, if you've got some suggestions, please do let us know, because there's got to be more ways of doing things than my way. So, my friends, at this point in time, I would like to say thank you very much for being part of my journey today. That's about all the information I have on rhodonite that I can share with you. I promise you, I will try and get myself some rhodonite in the very near future. I have the intention of going over to a wholesaler and getting some other pieces, just, you know, as part of helping me to revisit some of my favourite crystals and experience some crystals such as rhodonite for the first time and see what I pick up from them, if anything, you know, if anything at all. But if I do, when I do, I should not say if actually, I'll just say when I do, I'll be sure to make comments in the Sunday yarning. But for now, I'm going to say, look, love you, leave you, catch you on the next video. Have a wonderful day, wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye for now.